So this afternoon, what we're going to be working on is writing an equation given the equation's roots. So let's review by solving an equation by factoring. So the first equation I have is x squared plus 5x minus 6 is equal to 0. So remember, to do this, we multiply the first number times the last number, and we get negative 6x squared. So now I want two numbers that multiply to 6 and then minus to give me a 5. And those numbers would be 6 and 1. And when I multiply 6 times 1, I have to get negative 6. But when I add them, I have to get positive 5. So that would be positive 6x and positive 1x. Now I bring down the last number, negative 6, and I bring down the first term, which is x squared. Now I'm going to factor by grouping. I group the first two, and I group the last two. So the GCF of the first two would be x times x plus 6, and the GCF of the last two is 1 times x plus 6. So my two factors are x plus 1 and x plus 6. And remember, that still equals 0. So now I make that t-chart, and I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. So I have x plus 1 equals 0, x plus 6 equals 0, and then I solve for x. So over here on the left side, I get minus 1, I get x is equal to negative 1. Over here I'm minus 6. On the right side, I get x is equal to negative 6. So my roots, or my zeros, are negative 1 and negative 6. Let's take a look at number 2. So same thing, I want to solve this equation, which is 2x squared plus x minus 3 equals 0. And I want to solve this by factoring. So remember, I multiply the first times the last, I get negative 6x squared. Now I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 6 minus to give me a 1, because there's really a 1 in front of that x. So those two numbers would be 3 and 2. And when I multiply 3 times 2, I have to get negative 6. But when I add them, I have to get positive 1. So that would be positive 3x and a negative 2x. Bring down negative 3 and bring down the 2x squared. So now I'm going to factor by grouping. I group the first two, I group the last two. Look at the first group, my GCF is x, so I have x times 2x plus 3. And the GCF of my last two would be negative 1 times 2x plus 3. My factors are x minus 1 times 2x plus 3. And remember, that equals 0. I make my t-chart. Set each factor equal to 0. X minus 1 equals 0. 2x plus 3 equals 0. If you recall that I have a 2 in front of that x, so that means that my root over on the right-hand side is going to be a fraction. So let's finish up the left side by adding 1. I get x is equal to 1. And on the left side, I'm going to minus 3. 2x is equal to negative 3. Divide by 2. X is equal to negative 3 halves. All right, so now what we're going to work on is going backwards. So what I want to do is, given the roots, such as negative 1 and negative 6, I want to work backwards. I want to take these roots and come up with this equation up here. Take the roots 1 and negative 3 halves and come up with this equation up at the top. So we are going to work backwards. So I have my roots over here, which is negative 3 and positive 7. So I want to come up with that equation. So the first thing we're going to do, so step 1, so write on your paper, is to set the roots equal to x. So over here I'll have x is equal to negative 3 and x is equal to 7. The next step would be to set equal to 0. So to get the x is equal to negative 3 equal to 0, I have to add 3. So x plus 3 is equal to 0. And on the right one, on minus 7, x minus 7 is equal to 0. My next step I would want to do is to take each one of those, x plus 3 and x minus 7, and set them up as factors. So set up as factors. So I have x plus 3 times x minus 7 equals 0. So once I have my factors set up, to go from a factored part up to an equation would be to multiply or double distribute here. So step 4 would be to multiply. Remember, we are multiplying two binomials together, so we do have to double distribute. Let's start. X times x is x squared. X times negative 7 is negative 7x. 3 times x is 3x. And 3 times negative 7 is negative 21, and that still equals 0. The last thing, step 5, I'm sure you know what that would be. That would be to clean it up and to simplify. So I do have like terms right here, negative 7x and positive 3x. That would be x squared. Negative 7x plus 3x is negative 4x. Minus 21 is equal to 0. And always make sure at the end that you do have it equal to 0. If you don't have it equal to 0, it's only an expression, not an equation. Okay, so now let's take a look at example number 2. I have 3 roots, 0, 4, and 5 halves. So the same thing as before, I'm going to take each one of those roots and set it equal to 0. So x equals 0, x equals 4, and x is equal to 5/4. Remember, step 2 was now to set them equal to 0. Now, the first one is done for you. You don't have to do anything for that. X is equal to 0. The middle one, x is equal to negative 4, we have to minus 4 from both sides. X minus 4 is equal to 0. And if you look at the last one, x is equal to 5/4, it is a fraction. The easiest thing to do would be to put the x over 1 and cross multiply. So 4 times x would be 4x. Is equal to 5 times 1 was 5, and now minus 5. 4x minus 5 is equal to 0. So I'm actually going to have 3 factors here. Put them in parentheses now. I have x times x minus 4 times 4x minus 5, and that equals 0. Let's start with the x on the outside of the x minus 4. I'm going to distribute the x. I get x squared. And x times negative 4 is negative 4x. And now I have to multiply that by 4x minus 5. So we will double distribute again. X squared times 4x is 4x to the third. X squared times negative 5 is negative 5x squared. Negative 4x times 4x is negative 16x. And negative 4x times negative 5 is positive 20x. Remember, it's still equal to 0. The last thing would be to clean it up and combine any like terms we have. So I notice I have like terms right back here. So I have 4x to the third minus 5x squared. Negative 16x plus 20x is positive 4x, and that is equal to 0. All right, now let's take a look at problem number 3. Notice that I have irrational roots, and they're irrational because I have this square root of negative 5 there. So let's separate these roots and set them equal to x. I have x is equal to 2 plus the square root of 5, and the other root is x is equal to 2 minus the square root of 5. The next step would be to get them to equal 0. Minus 2 minus the square root of 5. So minus 2 on the other side minus the square root of 5. We get x minus 2 minus the square root of 5 is equal to 0. And the same thing on the other side. We're going to minus 2 and add the square root of 5, minus 2, add the square root of 5. X minus 2 plus the square root of 5 is equal to 0. Now I'm going to take my two factors and put them in parentheses. So that is x minus 2 minus the square root of 5 times x minus 2 plus the square root of 5, and that is equal to 0. Now notice what we are actually multiplying here are two trinomials together. So I do believe the easiest thing to do here is to set it up as an up and down multiply. So I'm going to rewrite it as x minus 2 minus the square root of 5, and right on the bottom put x minus 2 plus the square root of 5. And I'm going to kind of like do old-time multiplication. Remember back in 4th and 5th grade we multiplied large numbers. So we took each one here, multiplied this times this, this, and this, multiplied this times that, and the same thing with the x. You're going to take the x, multiply it by this, that one, and that one. All right, so I have positive the square root of 5 times negative the square root of 5 is negative the square root of 25. Now notice that the square root of 25, that is a perfect square. So the square root of 25 is actually 5. So I can just write a 5 here. Now I'm going to multiply the square root of 5 times negative 2. And that's going to give me negative 2 the square root of 5. Remember, you can't actually multiply them because one's a radical and one is not. Now we're going to multiply the square root of 5 times x, and that is going to give me a positive x the square root of 5. Now we're going to start multiplying the negative 2 times the negative square root of 5. So negative 2 times negative the square root of 5 is positive 2 the square root of 5. I would put it right underneath the one that it should match up with. So that's positive 2 the square root of 5. When I multiply negative 2 times negative 2, I get positive 4. I'm going to put it right underneath the 5 so that they match up. And then I'm going to multiply negative 2 times the x, which is negative 2x. Now that doesn't match up with anything I have so far, so I'm going to put it right over here on the side, negative 2x. Okay, so now we're going to multiply x times everything. So x times negative the square root of 5 would be negative x the square root of 5, and that'll match up right underneath here. Negative x the square root of 5. Now we're going to multiply x times negative 2 is negative 2x, negative 2x. And now we're going to multiply x times x, which is x squared. So I'll put that right over here because that does not match up with anything. All right, so I'm going to draw my line right underneath, and now I'm going to add down. So I have negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. Notice here, right in the middle, these numbers right here, I have negative 2 the square root of 5 and positive 2 the square root of 5. So that's right, you guessed it, they cancel out. They become 0. Right here in the middle, I have positive x the square root of 5 and negative x the square root of 5. And again, those cancel out, so we can cross them out. They become 0. Right here, I have negative 2x and a negative 2x. That becomes negative 4x. And then lastly, I have this x squared that I'm just going to bring down. And then the last thing is, don't forget that it has to equal to 0. So my equation is x squared minus 4x minus 1 is equal to 0. So that's today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys tomorrow in class, and we will practice this a little bit more. Have a good night, everyone.